So I want to talk about sexual integration. To put it very plainly, what sexual integration is, and this is off the cuff, sexual integration is basically this process or the level of your mindset and the things that lead to sustainability within a relationship being something that also sexually turn you on. Right? There are things that are sustainable that turn you on. Now, when it comes to sex, sex is something that's often within people's shadows. It's often somewhat repressed or suppressed. and when that is the and when that is the scenario, it often leads to people being in a situation that works one of two ways, which is either a Madonna whore complex or a gentleman gigolo complex. And how that works is, let's say you have a Madonna whore complex as a man. Well, you may find a woman who seems like a quote unquote good girl, which means you don't think she's very sexually promiscuous or open, and you may think that she has good character and she's somewhat to herself. And that may be how you see a woman as a good girl. And then there'll be another woman who, as soon as you meet her, she's very sexually available to you. She doesn't place any standards or boundaries on you. She's very open sexually when it comes to you. And because of this, you may say that she's a woman of low value. She's a woman of low standards. And I think that that's a big misconception, because even women who are promiscuous aren't promiscuous for everybody. And even women who are good girls aren't going to be a good girl for everybody. I think it makes more sense to say that every woman that you come across, for the most part, has a capacity to be a promiscuous woman or to be a very sexual woman. And you should just choose a woman who has that capacity for you, because of, regardless of what her experiences have been with other people, within your own relationship, that's going to be something that's important. What a lot of men are willing to do is to be with a woman and trade a woman who is up to their full sexual standards and who they're able to enjoy themselves with. And women do the same thing because they view the other side as something that is of lower value. So what sexual integration is basically when you develop a sexual attraction for things that are sustainable and that can create longevity. So fetishes are something that can play a big part in this. And fetishes and kinks, they can go different levels, different things. It doesn't have to be all one thing, but there's different reasons why. So I'll give you an example. Let's say you're dealing with a woman. If kids come by, if the years go by, and whatever's going on with that, she may gain weight, she may lose weight. If only reason you're sexually attracted to her is because she maintains a particular size and not the particular shape, or maybe even loses the shape some, then you may lose attraction for her and that may wane over time. But let's say you have a foot fetish and she takes care of her feet. Whether or not she gains weight or loses weight, she's still going to have something on her that causes you to become aroused. Let's say a woman is dealing with a man. If she is attracted to his height, I'm not a tall guy, I'm 5'9", some people say I'm 5'10". If that is your stature, but I'm saying if you're a taller man, whether or not you gain weight or you lose weight, there's going to be something that's sustainable, to where the fact that you're able to stand over that woman is something that if she's sexually attracted to, she's going to be able to sustain that over time. So, there's different levels of this that come in, right? Let's say another thing is just, what are you looking at on that individual that causes you to be able to be attracted to them on a level that is not something that is easily changeable. Another aspect of sexual integration is just basically learning to not have a simple bitch mentality. What is a simple bitch mentality? A simple bitch mentality, or a simp mentality, is when you are attracted to somebody due to the lack of access that you have to them, right? So let's say a woman may have a mentality where a man triggers her ego by not giving her the validation that she desires. And because a man triggers her ego by not giving her the validation that she desires, at first she may be trying to be an attention whore, but now she wants to whore for his attention. Or let's say a man may see a woman and say, well, I don't want it if it's that easy. And because she gives it to him too easily, now he feels like it's of less value. When someone who's really interested in you is going to want to give you the time, attention, or the sexual expression without you having to work for it, because it's an intrinsic desire of their own. That's a backwards mentality. So a simple bitch mentality would be, let's say you have a woman who's consistent with you, she's sexually available to you, she reciprocates, she's attractive, and this other woman could be of the same or area or vicinity of a level of attractiveness, but because she's inconsistent with you, you spend all your time thinking about her because you're trying to figure out how to get her to come back over to your side. That's being simple. That's having a simple bitch mentality. So when we're talking about this type of thing, it's you need to learn to reward the behavior that you like to see. That's very important. Reward the behavior that you like to see. Another thing is a big aspect of what would be considered a Madonna whore complex is that after a woman has your children, the fact that she has your children, you put her up on such a pedestal to where you no longer feel comfortable slutting her out. You no longer feel comfortable taking that woman to the depths of depravity when it comes to sexuality to the extent that you're comfortable with and she's comfortable with. And you no longer feel comfortable with that because you put her on such a pedestal because she's had your children that you don't feel comfortable taking her to that place where you get downright dirty and slut that woman out. That is not good because that need and desire to be slutted out is still within that woman. So if you lose that just because you've known her for a long time, or because you have a high level of respect for her, because she's been good to you, or because a long amount of time has gone by, or because she has your children and she's your wife, and because you know you want to make things work with her over time, what that's going to do is going to sabotage your relationship. So when we're looking at the topic of sexual integration, we need to look at things more so from a perspective of how can I take these aspects of a relationship that are sustainable and not necessarily directly related to sexuality, and then make those things that arouse me sexually so that the relationship can maintain and balance. So fetishes play a big part in that. I think I talked about that a little bit earlier in this video, or it might have been a different one because I've been recording a couple of them tonight. But let's say this is how fetishes can help with that. So one time I looked at this study. It was a study of this experiment. I don't remember all the details, but somebody, I think there was a boot. It was just the boot, right? Someone had a boot, and they brought that boot closer and closer into someone's sexual encounters or their sexual experiences, and they brought it more and more ingrained into it. And then after that, they were able to completely remove sex from the equation, and then the boot was there, and then the boot alone was enough to cause that person to become sexually aroused. Now, if you can do that with a boot, you can do that with a woman being domestic. If you can do that with the boot, you can do that as a man with being emotionally invested in your woman. If you can do that with a boot, you can do that with several other things that denote being attached, or that denote having sustainability within a long-term relationship. It's a mental thing. Because naturally, how things work, and I used to listen to Esther Perel, and she makes some very good points about how the things that create desire, the things that create lust, the things that create sexual excitement are the antithesis of what you experience when you're in a long-term situation. So after a while, that newness, that novelty goes away. After a while, that limerence, after a while, that concoction, that big bomb of emotions and hormones that you experience when you first meet a person start to go away. So another aspect of it could be involving BDSM into your relationships. Another aspect of it could be role playing. You can find that novelty in different ways. Another aspect of it, and this is how I tend to look at it. I heard somebody say before that you can love 100 women, or you can learn to love one woman 100 ways. And it's just like if you look out into the universe and you say, okay, there is so much that's out there in the universe, it's so vast that you couldn't possibly go to every planet. But another thing that you could look at it is like this: in the same way that the universe is so vast, if we break down the building blocks of matter, and we go down to atoms, and we go down to cells, and we're going down to the building blocks of matter, then we cannot see exactly how small the smallest building blocks of creation are. They are entire ecosystems that are made up of these molecules and atoms and cells and all these different things, that you could take one thing that you're looking at and you could examine that thing under a microscope and you would never get to the full depth of it. And I think that's the same thing with understanding novelty versus sustainability, or the same thing as understanding novelty versus intimacy. That's a big thing to understand, is novelty versus intimacy. So when we're talking about sexual integration, a big aspect of it is learning to bring those things into a relationship. Oftentimes I talk about the biology first approach. Why the biology first approach is because what happens is when you, as a man, you establish a relationship on the basis of respect and sexual attraction, and realize chemistry, and then you're showing a woman through the pleasure that you give her that you can lead her to places that she hasn't been before, and that she enjoys it when she gets there, then she's going to be a lot more open-minded to that being something that permeates out of only a sexual encounter. And by you having the control, by you having the power in that situation, if you have integrity and you have leadership skills, then what's also going to happen is you're going to lead, you're going to be in control, and you get to pace out the level of emotional investment that you make, so that that woman doesn't become entitled to that emotional investment and the time that you give her. But it also gives you the opportunity for that woman to not be also gives that woman the opportunity to gain respect for your level of emotional discipline, right? So in this type of way, sexual integration is a lot more likely to happen. That woman can develop a certain level of a sexual attachment and sexual addiction to you. And when that happens, that's something that can happen over time. A big aspect of sexual integration is for your realized chemistry to be greater than your curiosity. When your realized chemistry becomes greater than your curiosity when you're dealing with an individual, that's when you have a very sexually integrated mindset. But if that isn't there, then that curiosity will lead to a desire. And if the desire isn't met, then what's going to happen is you're going to go from desire to feeling obligated to not express that desire. And then that obligation leads to resentment. Then that resentment leads to entitlement. And when resentment leads to entitlement, you're on very thin ice, to where if anything goes wrong, you're going to feel entitled to either want to sabotage the situation so you can go express those desires, or you're going to want to go express those desires without even ending your situation first. And that's often what happens when women cheat, and it happens when men cheat as well. So I'll explain how. Like, a big aspect of cheating is you may be with somebody and they not be your sexual preference. And it's not always because they don't have the ability to be that. It may just be because the box that you see yourself in, and the box that you presented yourself as, and the box they put themselves in and you put them in, is one to where you're not comfortable going to the full depths of what your sexuality is. Right? So that's a big aspect of how that can happen. And what sexual integration is, outside of the biology first approach, is about learning to go to those places after the fact and building that trust, building that desire, reshaping your masculine feminine dynamic, and going to those experiences, going to those places and saying, you know what? Yes, I love this individual. Yes, things could be better, but they will be better. The issue is that people like to act as if sexual attraction and things like that can't grow because time itself won't do it. And when you're doing things the same way, it won't work. And when someone is developed, like let's say you're dealing with an individual woman and she somewhat views sex in somewhat of a transactional mindset, consciously or unconsciously, and she gives you sex based off of the level of comfort that you give her. Pushing her sexual boundaries, pushing her sexual limits may be somewhat uncomfortable at first until she taps into the full pleasure of it. So when you're in that type of situation, or if you try to push that woman into an understanding of being naturally submissive, it's not going to feel natural because that's not how you presented yourself. It's going to feel forced. So if you just leave it alone and do nothing, then nothing's going to change. But if you try too hard, she's going to feel like you're begging. She's going to feel like you're trying to convince her of something that isn't true. And then it may push her away. And on another note, that woman may be so entitled to the consistency of the emotional investment that you make in that woman, that if you need to pull away emotionally in order to try to raise her desire or to raise her interest and to raise her attraction level, her social programming will come in and she will get offended, and her offense will cause her to miss out on the opportunity to grow her desire level for you. So there's a lot of different ins and outs and intricacies that come with sexual integration. I plan to be writing a book on this before too long. I have a certain level of understanding when it comes to the biology first approach. I've been working on this understanding of sexual integration from the other side. I have helped people in my coaching have relationships that they were able to add that in. And just the thing about it is, I usually advocate for the biology first approach first, because it's going to be a lot less hurtful and it's going to be a lot less painful, and then there's also a lower chance of wasting your time. It's really about the efficiency of your time and the efficiency of your efforts and your energies, and also the consistency of how you present yourself instead of flipping on a dime. If you start off with a woman, from the biology first approach with the good D and the guidance, then you can pace out the emotional investment that you make, and then make it so that she has to behave and assimilate with your program in order to reach the next level. And when that's what the situation is, it really makes it a lot easier to go through this process of creating a good masculine feminine dynamic. But when you don't have those things in place, oftentimes it's going to be very painful for both you and the woman. It's going to be painful for you because when you try to have those real conversations about what that woman's preferences are, when she met you, she may not have even been fully aware of her sexuality to be able to choose you based off of her preferences. Now, those preferences can be changed. That's an interesting thing that people don't talk about. Now, you respect a woman's preferences if those preferences keep her from dealing with you. But after that woman decides she wants to deal with you, you can change her preferences. And I can give some examples of that. I can think of how different things can work in that particular way. Like, let's say you're not a particularly tall guy. Well, you can kiss a woman. If you're not a very tall guy, then often it's going to be easier for you to stand up and hit a woman from the back. And if you can do that really well, and she can see your the substance of your masculinity within your strength, within your ability to defend yourself, within your ability to hustle, within your physical strength and your aggression, then that can overcome just a woman wanting to be with someone who's very tall, especially if she's seen you beat up tall guys. Now, me, I have that, I have that because I'm a boxer and I'm not a very tall guy. I'm like 5'9", some say I'm 5'10", and being that guy, I've been in the ring with guys who was 6'1", 6'2", 6'3", 6'4", maybe even 6'5", and I've knocked out guys like 6'4". So when I have that experience and women around me may have seen it, then it makes it a lot easier for them to not view me as less masculine because I'm not as I don't have as tall of a stature. A lot of it has to do with your energy and your demeanor. So you can change a woman's preferences. Like, let's say how easy it is to kiss a woman when you're standing up, right? Or how it feels when you're cuddling each other if your bodies just fit together well. If you have a bigger dick than most of the tall guys that she's been around, then this can begin to change a woman's preferences to shorter guys. There's this one woman that I dealt with before, and she was probably about 5'5" and a half, 5'6", and she said she only really likes to date guys who are like 5'8", 5'9" to like 5'6", or because in her experience, guys who aren't tall tend to have big dicks. So for her, that became her preference. Oftentimes, a woman's preferences are going to be based around a dude who gave them the highest level of pleasure at that point in their life. And then that's going to be somewhat of an imprint that's going to cause them to, have kind of be drawn towards men with that particular body type or that particular look or that particular vibe. So, these are just some things to think about when it comes to sexual integration. This is just a rant. Brody out.